The Realme 2 Pro. We finally have one in our hands right now, and that's all thanks to your support. So I love you guys. Thank you for your support. Now, coming back, I know you guys want me to review the Realme 2 Pro, but that's gonna take a while, for in-depth testing and all that, and also the fact that I'm not at the set right now. But given all the rumors of Xiaomi bringing the Redmi Note 6 Pro to India, we kind of decided to pit the Realme 2 Pro against it to see how these two stack up. So let's do that in this video. Hey guys, Ash here from C4E Tech, and let's get started. If you do end up liking this video, please don't forget to turn on notifications by clicking that bell icon. And by the way, here is a card to our monthly giveaway. Check it out, right here. Now the minute you pick these two phones up, you get a feel of the different design language that went into making them. On one hand, you have the tried and tested Xiaomi design on the Redmi Note 6 Pro. It might not look as flashy as, say, the reflective back panel on the Realme 2 Pro, but it feels sturdy in hand and gets the job done. On the flip side, we have the Realme 2 Pro. Just look at how the light reflects off the back on this one. Stunning, isn't it? Sadly, the gorgeous back feels super slippery in the hand, and it is an absolute fingerprint magnet. As much as I love the design of the Realme 2 Pro, I kind of feel that the rounded edges of the Note 6 Pro gives it a better in-hand feel. Yeah, I know how that sounds. It kind of sounds like nitpicking, but when you have phones that are so similar in size, you might end up noticing these tiny little things. Speaking of tiny little things, we have the teardrop notch on the Realme 2 Pro. It houses the 16 megapixel front-facing camera and the sensors. The speaker grill is a thin little slit tucked right away into the top edge of the phone. Overall, I think this is one of the best implementations of the notches out there. The Redmi Note 6 Pro also has a notch, albeit a much bigger one. That combined with a bigger lip at the bottom means that the display on the Redmi Note 6 Pro is a tiny bit smaller, 6.26 inches compared to the 6.3 inches on the Realme 2 Pro. Now that tiny bit of screen real estate doesn't really amount to much, but the thinner bezels combined with the discrete notch gives it a much more immersive feeling, especially if you're watching movies or playing games. Now that doesn't mean the screen on the Redmi Note 6 Pro isn't good. Both these Full HD Plus panels have excellent colors and look really nice no matter what angle you're looking at them from. Perfect for browsing through Facebook or binge watching some Netflix. The bottom firing speakers are really good on both these devices. So as a movie watcher, you're not going to be disappointed. However, all that said, the thin bezels and the immersion factor, especially if you're playing something intense, PUBG maybe, that's the reason why I'm going to say this round it's going to go to the Realme 2 Pro. Now while we are on the topic of gaming, let's just take a minute and talk about the internals. Of course, as most of you guys already know, we have a Snapdragon 660 chip inside the Realme 2 Pro. On the Redmi side, we have the same Snapdragon 636 that we've seen before on the Redmi Note 5 Pro. Yep, Xiaomi's new Redmi Note Pro does not get a new chip, it's just the same old hardware. As disappointing as that is, there is a little bit more to the story here. Hang in there for just a quick second, it's gonna get a tiny bit technical. So this is the general core count and clock speeds of the Snapdragon 660. We have one quad-core cluster of Cryo 260 cores clocked at 1.8 GHz and another 4-core cluster that's clocked at a higher frequency. Generally, the higher frequency is 2.2 GHz, but here Realme has chosen to go with the lower clocked one, so this goes up only to 1.95 GHz. So what it means is that something like a full-fledged Snapdragon 660, for example, something like a MIUI 2 will obviously perform better than the Realme 2 Pro, but then that is not the point of today's video. This is the Redmi Note 6 Pro versus the Realme 2 Pro, and even the underclocked 660 should be able to handily beat the 636. It does when it comes to benchmarks. Moving across to real life scenarios though, both these chips perform really well, and everything from app animations to multitasking feels fast and smooth on both these phones. The real difference comes when we get to gaming. The Adreno 512 inside the 660 got to let it flex its muscles over the 509 on the 636. Overall gameplay was definitely smoother on the Realme 2 Pro, especially with demanding titles. Now powering these performance monsters, we have a 3500 mAh battery on the Realme side of things, while the Redmi Note 6 Pro gets a bigger 4000 mAh battery. The more powerful processor combines with the smaller capacity battery, so we should definitely see better battery life on the Note 6 Pro. Now, rounding off the hardware, we've got 464, 664 and 8128 RAM storage variants for the Realme 2 Pro. With the Note 6 Pro, we've got a 332 base variant along with 464 and 664 options. Realme also has a major advantage here in the form of a dedicated microSD slot, while the Xiaomi phone, the Note 6 Pro, has to deal with hybrid. Summing it up, the performance round goes to the Realme 2 Pro. Now, moving on to the software side of things, we have MIUI 9.6 on the Redmi Note 6 Pro, while the Realme 2 Pro is running on ColorOS 5.2. Both are based on Android 8.1 Oreo. Now, we've talked about these user interfaces to death. For MIUI, and I actually have a dedicated video, so I'll leave a card to it here. Now check it out if you want to know more. As far as ColorOS goes, there's a certain learning curve associated with it. It is quite different from other Android skins. Like, for example, you can't just swipe away notifications. What's up with that? But it also happens to have a ton of cool little features. Screen of gestures, pressing and holding the power button for half a second to launch Google Assistant, quick apps for multitasking with a swipe, and finally, real sound. On the surface, it looks like just about any other equalizer app out there, but it can work quite well. We tried it out with these pair of cans from Sonova, and it was really good. When compared side by side with the Redmi Note 6 Pro, the output does sound better on the Realme 2 Pro. Xiaomi, though, kind of hits right back with the presence of an IR blaster. Anyway, we've got kind of distracted there for a bit. Getting back to the software experience, there's AI-powered face unlock on both these devices and seems to work well. Overall, as I've mentioned before, MIUI has more fans as far as I know. It's got a ton of customization and it just feels a little bit more polished. So the Redmi Note 6 Pro wins this one, but if you end up liking ColorOS more, it could be a ColorOS win for you. Either way, it comes down to personal choice. Now finally, let's move on to those cameras. Both of them have dual cameras to the back and boast of a ton of AI features, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, the hardware. We have a 12 megapixel f1.9 primary shooter on the Redmi Note 6 Pro along with a 5 megapixel depth sensing unit. On the other hand, the Realme 2 Pro sports a 16 megapixel primary camera with a wider f1.7 aperture and a secondary 2 megapixel depth sensor. Under bright light, both these cameras take some gorgeous looking photos. The detail levels are excellent and the colors look good. The dynamic range though is better on the Realme 2 Pro. Switching over to macro shots, you can see the slightly wider aperture on the Realme means that we have a little bit more natural blurring of the background on these images. One point worth mentioning here is that the Redmi Note 6 Pro has an AI mode which we left on for most of these shots, and in a few instances like this, the scene detection kicked in and bumped up saturation. You can of course turn it off if you found it too annoying. Now moving on to low light, we see that the Note 6 Pro takes markedly brighter images than the Realme 2 Pro. The detail levels though are comparable. The brighter images are mainly because of the larger 1.4 micron sized pixels on the Note 6 Pro and that Xiaomi is pushing the ISO high. Moving straight on to portraits, we have some good looking shots in here as well. Once again, I kind of prefer the shots that were taken with the Realme 2 Pro. The colors are better. Both kind of do a good job when it comes to edge detection. Realme has even thrown in a bunch of lighting modes for their rear portraits. When it comes to selfies though, Xiaomi takes the cake with the 20 plus 2 megapixel front cameras delivering very impressive shots. The Realme 2 Pro has a 16 megapixel selfie snapper and managed to kind of get some decent shots, but I found the AI beauty mode to be a bit too overpowering. Even with it switched off, we kind of prefer the skin tones with the selfies taken by the Redmi Note 6 Pro. Next up, we have video. The Realme 2 Pro can shoot 4K, while for some ungodly reason Xiaomi has still chosen not to enable it on the Redmi Note 6 Pro. It's still limited to 1080p. The level of details and the colors are better on the Realme, but the lack of stabilization does hurt it. The Redmi Note 6 Pro on the other hand does have EIS on board and it works pretty well. So when it comes to optics, I'm gonna have to call this one a tie. Now time to wrap this one up. The price. The Redmi Note 6 Pro hasn't yet been launched in India, so we don't have exact official pricing information to go on. Rumors though seem to indicate that Xiaomi is looking to bring the Redmi Note 6 Pro to India pretty soon at about the 15K price segment. So should you wait for it, or should you go ahead and buy the base variant of the Realme 2 Pro for $13,990? Well, if you love MIUI, can live with the notch, and absolutely have to have an IR blaster on your phone, then the Redmi Note 6 Pro is the phone for you. For the rest, the Realme 2 Pro offers better specs, well-rounded cameras, and an eye-catching design, all at a cost 1000 rupees cheaper than the current Redmi Note 5 Pro. Also, if you're in a strict budget and want a phone with 128 gigs of onboard storage, then the 8128 version of the Realme 2 Pro might be your best bet. So those are our thoughts on the Realme 2 Pro and the Redmi Note 6 Pro. Now we want to know yours, so let me know via the comments below. Do tell us which of these two phones do you want to pick. If you know someone who's shopping for phones within this 15k price point, then share this video with them. And with that, it's enough time. I bid you adieu. Thumbs up, thumbs down based on what you felt about this video. Also subscribe and turn on notifications if you haven't done yet. Go ahead, click that bell icon. Till next time, my name's Ash. You've been watching C4 Retech and I'm signing off for now. You guys have a great day. Bye-bye.